One of the things that we talk a lot about for AW is as we invest in women, what impact does it actually make and why does it matter? You know, when we started this movement a couple years ago, I think the ethos behind it was if there wasn't a fraternity or a support system for all of us, can we make one and can we drive impact? Can we put more women in leadership positions, board positions, and help more companies led by women IPO? And so this became this idea of living and breathing and owning the business life cycle. So when we talk about investments and decisions, how do each of you think about investing in women founders, and how do you believe that impacts the larger marketplace and ecosystem?
I'll go first. Hi, my name is Fan. I've been in the gaming industry for over a decade. I used to work at Riot Games, Amazon Luna, and then also did crypto investment a little bit. And then now I just invest by myself. So to answer the question, what is the impact and what does it matter, right? Well, if I look at the audience today, well, there's probably over 50% that are women, right, in the professional space. So it's very important, right? It's a lot of impact, mainly two. So the first one is we need more women in the leadership position to help the next generation to come forward and see kind of like a path and future for them. And that was the one thing that I did not see a lot when I started my career 20 years ago. So I think to provide that kind of path and hope for the future generation of women is very critical. That's the first reason. And the second reason is impact, right? So I recently saw an article which is by, I think, ASSC Paris Business School, talk about surveying basically over 1,000 PE firm. And out of the 1,000 PE firm, they noticed that of the PE firm that has women in the investment committee usually outperform the committee that's all men by 12% IRR average, right? So I think given that the society important and also the financial impact, I do think that investing either money or time or resources in female founder is very critical for a financial perspective and for just our future generation perspective.
Hi everyone, I'm Kat Mañalac at Y Combinator. I've been at YC for about 10 years now, and YC has funded, gosh, over 4,500 companies, including Airbnb, Dropbox, Reddit, many that you've heard of. And at YC, we often fund companies when it's just, the founding team. So it'll be like two founders, hacking in, their essentially garage, and just an idea. And we tell people to solve problems that they themselves have experienced. So to build companies that solve their own problems. And so the way that I see it is that if you, fund women, if you fund people who are traditionally underrepresented in tech, you are going to be able to solve a much wider, broader range of problems. I think about it a little bit like, up until in the 70s, they blocked women of childbearing ability from a lot of medical research studies. And then later on in the 80s, they reversed some of that. But part of the problem was when you blocked women of childbearing age from participating in studies, we got left out of a lot of important studies like heart disease studies, like treatment for heart disease studies. And so they don't know how certain treatments impact women. So I see that in terms of tech as well. And if we don't fund more women and people of color and underrepresented folks, we will be ignoring a wide swath of problems that exist out there.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nadia, CEO, founder of KOLLECTIN. Actually, empowering women, investing in women is actually one of my life passions because KOLLECTIN basically empowers women entrepreneurship at the very early stages when they're actually thinking about starting their business. And what's important with women is actually women think a lot before they start a business. It's actually 1 in 2 women from my community of women, and we have 6,000 women sellers on our platform trying to start their business. Actually, they all want to start business, but they overthink. And a lot of times it has to do with confidence issue. It has to do with ability for sourcing or ability for financing or ability to run the company. So this is not to, say anything bad about the other gender, but women tend to think a lot before they take that first step. And, I think that investing in women is really allowing them to take that first step and really get past that hurdle so they can really, so we can really support each other. Because I think one of the first earliest things that when I was out really raising money for Collectin is a lot of men investors that I talked to, like, are you sure women will help each other? You know, aren't you guys very competitive? And I'm saying, you know what? In fact, it's completely opposite. Women are actually very helpful and love to build communities. So investing in them is actually a lot safer than investing. I'm not saying of a different race. So anyway, so that's my take.
The reason I do it is it's purely selfish. As Katie had mentioned, is I was co-founder of a mobile gaming company, and Fan would know, and well, I guess all of us would know that it's a very male-dominated space. And for the longest time, it's if you're the only one in the room, it's incredibly lonely, and I think many people feel that when they're not part of the dominant culture or any of that sort. And I joke around, I say, you know, on the inside, I feel and act like a white male, but the outside, they keep treating me like an Asian female. And no matter how hard I would try to kind of live into this kind of brackets of things, I realized it wasn't me. And all this time I spent thinking it was me. And sure, there's certain things that I could change and improve. I just, they still treated me in that way, and it's because there wasn't enough of me there. And when there was like other people there, I remember, you know, I was, in our company, we had 360-degree reviews, and at one point there was a commentary upon like how I was supposed to carry myself, and I realized this is like a gaming company where I would say that pants are probably optional. Like they're so creative. But for me, I was being compared to Sheryl Sandberg, who was always on time. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. And I was like, why are you comparing me to this when guys can get away with flip-flops, you know? And so it's just, if there were just more of us, then I could kind of be me, because I'm not like every single woman either. I'm not like every single 50%. So it is incredibly selfish, the reason why I do it. And after we sold the company, I actually ended up working with Kat at Y Combinator. And after that, I ended up doing a fund that invested purely in female founders, teams of female founders from YC. So, and that fund's been doing amazingly well according to the stats. It's all in line with that. So mine's very selfish.
So let's stay on that topic a little bit, and let's talk about how the profile of the woman founder has changed. I think in the early days when we were all in tech ages ago, I helped build and launch a small company called Dollar Shave Club, also very dominant industry during that period. But tech as an industry has changed drastically. And the profile of what a woman founder is expected to be has changed a ton. I think back in the day, when you think about a woman founder, conservative, you know, judicious, due diligence, probably not necessarily the massive disruptor, like safe and steady. But when we were having this prep call, I mean, Holly, you were telling me about like they have just changed. Like women are owning their truth, owning their narrative. And so maybe take me through from your perspective, and Nadia, certainly from yours, like how has the image of the woman founder changed, and how has that changed like your investment strategy and who you choose to invest in?
Yeah, want to go first? I think I know what you want me to talk about. So I co-founded the company in 2006, and at that time there wasn't a lot of female founders. And of those who were female founders, and their partner they were either married to or they were related to, I'm cousins with my CEO, and that was a very kind of, I wouldn't say normal thing, but it was certainly. It's already uncommon that there were female founders, and if they were, it was almost like I needed a man, or you needed a man to give you credibility and open up the door. I would say like the next generation in terms of the millennials, you look at like Katrina Lake from Stitch Fix. Like she just did it on her own. Like a solo founder took it IPO. Same with Bumble. Whitney. I'm gonna mess it up. Whitney. I'll just call her Whitney. Heard? Thank you, Whitney. But she could just be called Whitney. I mean, youngest women to go IPO, and these women are just owning it. I do have I feel like that next generation, they are okay at saying kind of what they want. They don't need as much credibility of a male to kind of get them into that door. And it is really, I'd say, the generation of like Julia Hartz and the folks that did have to kind of help pave that way. I will say it's kind of funny. I'll probably talk to some of the millennials in the room. The running joke about millennials is entitlement, right? But I think it's that entitlement that's actually enabled them to push forward. That the women of that, like making those companies, are not afraid to say, no, I deserve more. I deserve this. I deserve that. I mean, there's still so much gap to close, but I just look at them in awe, and I just love it. Oh, did you want me to tell? And they're owning their own private jets now. I think that's probably one thing she wanted to want me to tell.
Holly calls them PJs.
Oh, apparently PJs don't just mean pajamas. That's what I learned.
Well, I mean, I started off I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started at 21, and in a very traditional sense of business, like a traditional fashion, jewelry, what we call private label fulfillment, which is creating your own label and creating labels for other people. And I was literally fresh from college, never worked a day in my life, and knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I just knew, I want to make something. And when most women will go into fashion just because that's what they know and that's what they're familiar with. And I went into fashion. I'm like, well, apparel is too hard, so jewelry, even though I couldn't make jewelry. But even with then, I saw, maybe because I was in fashion at that time, I didn't ever feel like it was because I was a woman, and maybe because I'm in women's fashion. So there was very equal amounts of women and men in the business who either owned the business or was in the business. So traditionally, when I grew that business, I didn't see myself as disadvantaged. Just if things weren't selling, if things were going right, and I wasn't making money, I didn't think it was because it was a woman-owned. It was more as my product is just not right. It was really big on the product market fit. And then when I transitioned into KOLLECTIN, which is more of a fashion tech, did I think it was a woman thing? I'm not quite sure. At times, I'm like, is it the woman thing, or is it the fashion thing, or is it the fashion, the woman, the tech thing, and the Asian thing? So, but then honestly, at the same time, I never really think of it as it's holding us back. It's more of an opportunity. If things were going right, it's probably because it was not a right fit. It was just, or I'm not pitching it correctly. I'm not actually making someone understand what it is that I see. And I think with any kind of women entrepreneurship and that journey, I think it's evolved, meaning that back then when I started it, it was like credit cards and money you borrow from mom and dad, friends and family, and you either go to the bank, but you would have to build a business first. But now there's actually a lot more options. You can actually go out and raise if you have a really great idea and a great thesis, and there are a lot of mentors out there who want to pass it forward and share. And I feel like that has changed a bit. That sharing component, that building a community component has changed over time. People realize that what we really need is not be selfish and just hold on to our experience and say, oh my God, I had it really tough and I'm not going to share because you better go through it yourself. I feel like now at this generation, people are more willing to share and more willing to pull each other up and help each other make connections. So it has changed in some way and it hasn't.
One thing that I've been excited to see, in the past 10 years at YC and more recently is more technical women founders. So more CTOs, more teams that are led by technical women, because as we just talked about on the AI panel, the entire future is AI. And so we need women building those products as well. So that's one thing. YC is very biased toward funding software and technical founders, and so that's been really cool to see. I think I've seen more and more technical women funded recently than 10 years ago.
Yeah, and just to add on what Holly said about the difference in the younger generation of female founders, I can think of two very distinct memories that I have. One, it's probably a year ago, I was attending a startup meetup with a bunch of male and female founders. And I was chatting with a group, probably 5-6 people, and there was a male founder. He made a comment and joke about Asian women, which I found a little bit weird, but it was not super offensive, so I let it slide. But then that same evening, in that group, there were two very, very young female founders actually messaged me and say, hey, I am so sorry that I didn't speak up. to actually push back and remind that guy that joke was not appropriate. And then I will make sure the next time, whenever that happened, I will defend and speak up for other women. And that kind of moment hit me. It's like, oh, wow, that's amazing, because 20 years ago, I wonder if people would have done that or I would have done that, right? I think there's definitely like a generational difference, that the younger generation, they're more brave, outspoken, right? I think that's one of the key difference that I've seen. The second key difference that I've seen is they are not afraid to demand and ask for things, right? I think Abby, one back, call it like demand the ball. I remember when I first started managing people, there was this very, very young female employees on my team. She's always demanding opportunity. And I think that's just awesome. Hey, I want to go speak and present the next one. Hey, I want to go take on that project and this project. She was more outspoken than my other male employees. And I think in 20 years ago, in my experiences, that was definitely not the case.
So let's talk a little bit more about the community, because I think when we think about awe and we think about the contributions to the community, it's a lot of this idea of for women, funded by women, and empowering more women, right? So in your respective world and role, what do you think is the most important thing to give back and contribute to that community?
Should I start first? Okay, I'll do the honor. Wow, this is a loaded question. How do I contribute? Well, I guess maybe I start with a little bit of self-reflection, right? So when I first started my career, I always looked for a female sponsor, mentor, and champion, right? I want to learn from them. And in my mid-career, I started to look for a role model. So I want to see women at the executive position, so I feel that I can make it. Because if I see all 100% men at the leadership position, I feel defeated, because I start to wonder, well, if no one could make it, like, why could I make it? And then in my late career, that mindset changed because I feel like I can contribute more. So I started to invest more time, particularly to female employees or female founder. So that obviously include sometimes investment in money, but a lot of time connecting to people, connecting them to people, and actually invite them to a lot of events and promote them, right? And promote them, and then actually like champion for them. And I think one of the thing that I got value out of it when I hit my late career is to see how brave these female founders are, and then actually decided that I don't want to get validation and approval for the top executive, especially top male executive. I want to be my own boss and start my own things and chart my own future. I thought that I want to contribute to that, but in return, I also feel very inspired by that courage to actually start your company at 23 years old, and when you have nothing and just go out and demand. So that's kind of how I perceive this kind of mutual beneficial relationship.
I think for women, it's very important to really connect them. I think as a founder, I understand that actually the most useful thing is actually connecting people and genuinely want to do it because you want to help them or affect them in a positive way. I think that's most important. And then secondly, tell your story the way it is. Don't make it like, oh, this happened and then now I'm super successful. Tell it the way it was. It was hard. Share the story, let people be able to relate and understand that, oh my God, you went through the same thing as I did. And then from there, move on, beyond that. And I usually say I have a very simple system. I don't know if that's me getting old. I'm like, very simple system. Whatever my story, whatever my learning, keep it simple and train the next generation. 1, 2, 3. And then if we could help easily and very simply train them on what we've learned and share that, so that they can take our learning and then pass it forward or share it with other people, and that's how I feel like women can really benefit and really build and grow together, and benefit from each other.
I think maybe mine is a little bit more performative. I think the first thing would be write the check. I just, oftentimes for female founders, they just do not get enough money. And they outperform so much. It is like being an Asian female all the time. So it's nothing new. So if you can write the check, write the check. And then the second is really the sponsorship and promotion. When you connect them, and even more importantly, actually, I'm stealing this from you, Katie. It's what they say when you're not in the room, when they're not in the room, to be able to promote them, because you don't know what's being said. And there's somebody in that room talking about you, or hopefully, and hopefully it's positive, because we didn't get here without those, that's for sure.
Something that Holly's really good at is not only writing the check, but essentially like convincing other people to write the check to the female founder. So, an example is there was a company a few years ago that she reached out to me and Katie, and she was like, "You should angel invest in this company. Like, they're amazing. Here are the reasons." And she was like, the full-on reason I did it was because Holly reached out, and we both invested.
Still alive. It's still alive.
Yeah, the company's still alive. They're gonna, we have some hopes for them.
It's for the community.
But yeah, I think and so for me, it's yes, writing the check, and and time is a huge one, and I find that to be the hardest because like I'm a newish mom. Women just in the end get a lot of the childcare, tasks thrown onto them. So you're not only doing your job, but all this other stuff. And so it's like, but being intentional about how I spend my time with working with, women who are earlier in their career. And then also, if you're investing in women, I think you talk about this, Holly. Like women often get asked like prevention questions, right? When investors are talking to women, they are asked different questions than male founders. There's a really good, I think it's a Harvard Business School did a big study on this and an article, and so I recommend taking a look at it. And if you're interviewing women founders or considering investing in them, just think about the questions that you ask them, and would you ask that same question to a male founder or an all-male team?
Yeah, I think that's really good because a personal anecdote, there was a woman who was starting a really cool company that you were able to write interactive fiction. And she found me, she's like, "I want you on my cap table." And I was like, "Well, you worked in third-party publishing. Did you really run a gaming?" I don't know. And we kept having coffee, and finally she said something that stopped me dead in my tracks, which was, she's like, "Why don't you believe me?" And I was like, oh my gosh, I might be a lot harder on her. Because I was trying to I was like, I just don't believe, because honestly, I never saw that. In my own company, we didn't even have we didn't have people running the game teams that were women. They were all men. And so maybe much later we had one. And that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah,
I had a, sorry.
I just want to add to that. So I think the previous panel, the lady talked about everyone has bias. I think a lot of people don't recognize that even sometimes women ourselves have bias towards other women because we hold such a high bar for ourselves. So unconsciously, we hold a higher bar towards other women when you compare to men. And I made those mistakes very early in my career. And I think now I hit a point that I'm gonna adjust it, and probably to extend that I'm just gonna promote and champion women all the time. And I'm just gonna, regardless of the bar, I'm gonna do it because I know the world, is holding a higher bar to them, but that bias do exist.
But it's partly because there's not enough of us there, right? Like if it was more, then I could be like a white male and people will see me like a white male.
I actually had a funny story that I was sharing with the group. I was actually in a meeting with some potential investors, and it was a man. And my advisor was also a man, was on that call. He's like, "I just want to see how you're doing, what you're doing wrong or right, and give you some advice." And I was just talking because I'm from a traditional business, and also I'm not a non-technical founder in a tech fashion business. And I think the topic was about AI. How do we, do all that data and AI thing in KOLLECTIN. And I thought I answered it just as the way it should be answered. But then there was just so much doubt and so much the way I don't even think he realized that. And I was just like, oh, just answering questions, thinking it's just another day. I mean, I'm so used to tough questions, and I just thought this is just the way it is. The environment out here is like a nuclear winter for fundraising, so this is probably just the way it is. But then after I hung up the phone, and my advisor kind of just like sat there, and the first thing he said to me was like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "I didn't know that's the way it was for women." Like, he should never have replied you the way he replied you. Like, you answered it perfectly. You know exactly what you know because this is your domain expertise, and you know AI, you know data, and you know what your product is, and what you're doing. Yet he questioned everything that you had to say just because either he wasn't sure it was because I was a woman or because I was a non-technical tech founder. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good. If that was the toughest it was going to be, then it's not so bad. So I thought that was an interesting story. Yeah.
I think this is a really interesting point that we're making, though, because while AWE and this panel is really celebrating a lot of the progress and progression that our industries have experienced, the biases do continue to occur on both sides. And so, in this audience, you have a lot of people who are investors, early founders, pre-seed. What type of advice would you give them, being actually both investors and operators?
I will start first again, since people want me to go first. I will give 2 pieces of advice. The first one, I don't know, have you guys read the book by Abby Wambach, The Wolf Pack? Okay, if you haven't, we can just Google her, Abby Wambach. She's a soccer champion. She's amazing. She did a talk at Barnard College in 2018. So the essence of it is basically she encouraged women, whenever you go to a workplace in a group, find your wolf pack, right? So find people who share similar goal of you, and then support each other, champion each other, and promote each other the hell out of it. Now, I think this is super important, and I did not do that enough in my early career, right? And this wolf pack doesn't have to be senior woman. It could be whoever is in the room with your peers, right? You can just have this understanding. Whenever I hear something, I will tell you, you will tell me. You hear about a party, I invite you, you invite me. And then in the room, we champion for each other. Basically, hey, if I notice that this guy keep interrupting her, I'll just say, hey, sorry, what did you say, Kat? Like, can you repeat that? I thought you got interrupted, right? It's so powerful, especially in your mid and young career when you don't know how to navigate it by yourself. So finding a wolf pack is the first thing. And I thought Holly did a pretty good job at forming that wolf pack. I saw a lot of her intentional effort doing it. And the second piece of advice that I will give to women is, so I grew up in Asia, so US has a very politically correct environment. The advice I would give to women is pay 20% to what people say, but pay 80% to what they do. So I said that because I remember this one incident when I was working in Shanghai in China, which is not as politically correct as US. There was this very senior man in the meeting room said something inappropriate. He said that, wow, talking to this guy, negotiating with him, it's like fighting with women. He makes no sense and is emotional. So that statement is completely inappropriate in the US, but in the context of China, right, I didn't say a lot of things, but why I say you need to pay 80% to what they do, but not what they say, is despite of what he said, he was actually my biggest champion and career kind of like advocator back in the day. So in every dinner with senior executive, he would say, Fan was amazing. Fan completed his LPL project, lead this team. She's amazing. We should recruit her every time. So it kind of gives me a different perspective about what people say and what they do, right? It carries a different weight because I have observed a lot of opposite. They say, oh, I champion women, I advocate it. But then when it comes to actually doing it, don't see it a lot.
Do you all want to quickly go before we go to Q&A?
We all saw the sign that said go to Q&A. So we're all
I know,
looking
so
at each
everybody's a
other.
little nervous. Just give a quick tip, and then we'll go to Q&A and come back.
Yeah, I don't think I can, I absolutely agree with you on Wolfpack or finding your support system or community. At YC, at least, for our early stage founders, the women founders are just as successful in terms of fundraising as our male founders. And, you know, YC, I think, helps lend credibility. We help with the fundraising process. There's like a support system of 10,000 founders who are sort of, you know, available to you. And so I think it helps in terms of, you know, increasing your chances of success. And you can do it without YC, of course. But I think you have to be very intentional about it. Like Holly, you're very intentional, as we said, at doing this. And I think that's important. I tell founders all over the world, like, you should find your, you know, sort of group of other founders, maybe some investors, like people that you do, you know, regular check-ins with, like whether that's like group office hours or something like that, because it helps not only from like a tactical perspective, but also from an emotional perspective. Like, it is really hard building a company. It is, and so having people around you who can empathize and can help you through the difficult times, I think is huge.
I mean, as a woman founder, I would tell another woman founder is if you believe it, then you know, be confident about it. I think the worst enemy to any woman entrepreneur is confidence, is the ability to, you know, make that confidence just spread and make other people believe in you. So if you feel something strongly, don't give up. If you chose entrepreneurship, you obviously enjoy the torture. So it's you know, it's not about where you are at the end. It's about the journey. So if you actually get there at the end, you might actually miss the journey. So I think that confidence for women is key, especially in a fundraising world that is very difficult, and you're competing with other great products, other great men and ideas and companies. So.
Yeah, I guess for me, really quickly, some of the things that I see some of the best founders and operators do is they try very hard to orchestrate things. So it's leveraging the wolf pack, being very intentional, believing it. And for those who are maybe more of my generation that were taught not to ask, they will go out and ask. They will orchestrate, like even on the investor side, they'll be like, here's the list. I see you're connected with so-and-so, forward this. And I'm like, okay, okay.
So Holly's advice is make the connection, write the check, and all will be good. So we're going to go to a quick Q&A. Any questions in the audience?
Hi, I feel extremely awkward asking this question as a guy. Anybody else? No, okay. As an ally, as friends with a woman with whom I'd like to start a company, what advice would you have for a male co-founder?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, thank you for asking that, man.
So it's kind of funny. Kat and I, we used to do, at YC, there would be, I don't know if you guys do this anymore, but right before fundraising, they would put off some time with female founders and talk about fundraising. And sometimes the male co-founder would come. And sometimes, so this is when things were more in person, absolutely. If investors still kind of have the bias, so if sometimes, and you really have to be sensitive to have the conversation with your co-founder, but sometimes being in the room, sadly, does give credibility. It just opens up the door to already how amazing the woman is, but it might make sense for you guys to go together, because I've definitely seen times where they could catch the things that happened to you, and it was a male investor. Right.
Yes.
That's definitely one thing I'd say. That's definitely one thing.
But I would say one thing I told the male co-founder, so usually it's the CEO, and if the CEO is a woman, she's usually leading the fundraising process. And yeah, if the male co-founder is there in the room, sometimes the investor would address questions to the male co-founder. And so in that case, the male co-founder who's not the CEO should like defer back to the CEO. And so that's something to have a conversation about and to sort of practice prior to going in a fundraising
And if they're not the CEO, like if the guy is the CEO, I do wish I would have been brought into the room. I wish like the whole team was brought in, because then it would have given me as a woman, because oftentimes you still look at the number of women on boards, they don't get to see what's behind all of that, and that's where board seats get determined, that's where the governance, that's like so many things get determined. So if you are a male CEO and you have access, it would be great to bring your female co-founder to those things so they can learn.
Well, my experience is don't talk too much, just listen. And if they don't do something right, if, after the fact, either, a pitch meeting or a meeting that didn't go well or, it was not perfect, don't criticize. Keep the constructive criticisms later. Don't overanalyze. And I think it's not because we're emotional beings. I think it's just women and men function differently. And yeah, you have to respect each other's kind of, behaviors, I guess. Yeah, normal behaviors, yeah.
I would give one piece of advice to all the men in the room. It's hang out with women just the same way you hang out with men. And this is very, very powerful. I remember early in my career, I was talking to my male mentor. I asked him, I'm going to pitch this idea to a CEO. How do I earn his trust, blah, blah, blah. And he was very honest with me. He told me that if you can get him to talk to you the same way that he talked to other men and think of you as a man, the same way, then you will get an honest answer. Because if you think of you and treat you as a woman differently, he might be too polite to give you the really blunt answer, right? And that hit me really hard, and I started to think about how man has different social dynamic between themselves versus man and woman versus woman versus woman. So I think, man, if you can just in a social setting hang out with women, invite them to 10 p.m. drinks, just like what you do with your guys. Invite them to play video game at your place,
Poker
8 p.m.
nights.
Overnights, right? If you can just treat them, hang out the same way as you hang out with guys, that will make a big difference.
So we have time for one more question. Is there any other question in the audience? Okay, then I will ask the last question of the night, which is, oftentimes, as women leaders, we always talk about actually that comment, right? It's not what people say about you in the room that matters. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room that matters. So that applies for like male co-founders and women co-founders. Everyone has a reputation. So as you think about your own reputation, your own brand, and what you want to leave behind, what is just one line that you can give the audience that you would just inspire them by, like words of encouragement?
This was not in the pre-panel.
Yeah, this is a hard
But
one.
this is hard. This is like very philosophical question. One line. Can it be two lines?
Can we ask you that to answer that
Why don't you
question
go first,
while we
Katie?
think about it?
So my one line is, everything we do and everything that we set out to do for AWE, the intention is to not just champion women, but actively sponsor them. So people who know me know this about me. When we say mentorship, it's a very loose term. We give advice to people, right? A lot of times, male counterparts will give advice. But because they've never walked a day in the world that you live in as a woman leader of whatever Asian diaspora you are from, it is very seldom that they understand what you actually are experiencing. So I always say actively champion and sponsor young women, because it is only in that way can you change the dynamic of the boardroom.
For me, it's just one word. Like, this is my thing. It's just about care. Like, if you're going to do anything in your life, then care about it. Care about it, how it affects you, how it affects others. I tell my team all day long, they probably could tell you this, every single person is, care about your colleagues, care about your vendors, care about everybody you touch. If you do come from a place of care, then there will be no bad things said about you, because it will only be good things, and it will only go viral, and that's the only way to build communities, to get the word out about anything you want to do, and whatever is a vision you want to share or initiative you want to reach. I think that just caring makes a lot of difference in this world.
I'll go first. I would say probably just champion and advocate for women shamelessly and relentlessly, and do not hold a higher bar for other women. That would be the one thing that I hope that people will do, and hope people that will remember me by.
I think a word that I've been thinking about a lot recently is brave or bravery. And I hope I can, be brave myself in the decisions I make, and also help other women be brave and make the brave choices.
I think for me, one of the things that's driven me a lot, even to where I am today, is funny enough, a longing to belong. And I think that's many of us in this room. And if you know that other folks have that longing as well, and you can include them, that's like the community with all how those all come out. I think you can't go wrong investing in that for other people.
Well, and with that, we will end this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.